So my report is on a linguistic subject. It is about some peculiar features of Evenki texts. So what data am I using? Firstly, there are Evenki texts which were collected during our expeditions. Next, there are folklore texts collected in the first half of the, in the middle of the 20th century by Vasilevich. And then there are some questionnaires collected in 214. And I've also used some grammar descriptions. So, as we know, there are two plural markers in the Evenki language. Firstly, there is the L marker, which also has the R form. And it is used as a plural marker for most nouns. For example, adu, which means a net, and you add L and you get a little, which means nets. It may also be used with some uncountable nouns, such as meat. For example, in the north, they say ulde, meaning meat, and uldel is quite used, and it means a lot of meat or a lot of pieces of meat. There is also another marker, sal, or hal, in the west, in the northern western groups. So, sal is used for several nouns, and it may also mean some collectiveness, as verbs say. However, when we started processing our texts, we noticed that people say something very strange. So here is a sentence from one of the texts. And so it means that they bought bulls from several Evenki villages. However, it is shown in red. Some village names are pronounced in plural, which is strange because we all know that there is only one village with that name in the Evenki region. So then we noticed that a lot of texts actually have such features. Here is another example. So the woman is talking about various places where they brought wood. And she says, and you also see that, we all know that in that village there is only one shop, there is only one school, only one hospital, and only one bakery. However, they still use the plural form. And, here is also an example which uses this plural marker with the name of a month and with the name of the river, and both are actually singular. Then we started thinking, okay, we've got examples from two Evenki villages, Chirida and Ekana. Perhaps there are similar examples in folklore texts collected by Vasilevich. Actually, we haven't found, it was quite hard to kind of scan all the texts collected, at least published by her. However, we haven't found any examples. We have found the plural forms of uncountable nouns like meat, but we haven't found any examples like ours. So then we started thinking, what can these forms mean? We had two hypotheses. The first hypothesis was that it is actually not a plural marker. It's just some phonetic insertion which people make because, perhaps it is hard for them to pronounce these Russian borrowed place names or these village names or these month names. And on the other hand, we also thought that perhaps it is a grammatical marker, but perhaps it has some additional meaning of indefiniteness. Why we thought so? Because actually in all these texts, people were listing some names of places, and perhaps they sometimes were not sure about these places. Actually, as regards the first hypothesis about the insertion, we understood that actually a lot of loan words, like passport, which are perhaps even harder to pronounce. Of course, they have like a lot of consonants standing together, and still they are pronounced without this L by the same speakers. Then village names like Tulu, which is the Evenki name of Ra, the largest town in the region, and it's also without the plural marker. Okay, so without taking perhaps firstly, it is still strange that this strange plural marker is only used with village names, with some loan words, meaning place names like hospital, and with the name of mothers, which, well, in this case, they are also loan words. So perhaps are there any other nouns or any other words which are used with the same strange plural markers? And the second question was, we found them in the text, and we don't have an opportunity to go to these villages once again and to ask these people what they meant. So unfortunately, it's like a one-time opportunity. And so perhaps we could go somewhere else and ask other people if we could generate such sentences. So, as regards the first question, are there any other examples of other nouns used in the same strange plural form? Well, here is an example about a person who fought with a bear. And he says that which means no God, and he says no gods. Perhaps it's something belonging to the same subject. Then, well, a different form which is also, well, in Evenki dialects, they use this angi, which is used instead of, as a placeholder instead of nouns. If, like, I'm speaking about something and I've forgotten the word, or it's on the tip of my tongue, and I use angi. I'll then give you the angi. I have also worked in that thing, and she wanted to say kindergarten, but she said this placeholder word, and she still uses this plural. Okay, and what I should also say that not always such plural forms are used in enumeration context. So sometimes they're used just with some loan words without any enumeration and without any notion of indefiniteness. We in 2014 we went to Yukta, which is a village in the Evenki district in Krasnoyarsk region. Very few people speak Evenki there, and it's a very small village. So I can't say that our survey is representative. It's just a survey whether such forms are at least known to the people. And of course, our native speakers, there are very few of them, and they don't use the language in their daily life. So we just ask them to talk Evenki and to translate something from Russian into Evenki. And so, well, I mean, perhaps they're not very used to speaking later. So we asked them to translate some Russian sentences, which employ both month names, borrowed place names, and village names. And they also use this enumeration. And we also wanted them to generate these plural forms for Evenki place names, like the forest, the river, the lake. So, we also only had 4 speakers who could answer the questionnaire. So, their opinions were different. So one of them said that only singular, well, how we did it. So we first asked them to translate the Russian sentence into Evenki, and then we asked if the different form could be used. So one speaker said only generated sentences in singular, and said that, well, plural forms for her, they either meant something else, or they were just stupid or incorrect. A different person generated only singular forms, but she said approved of every plural form. She said yes, everything was correct. And the other 2 speakers sometimes generated singular forms, and sometimes they generated the plural forms, which was a surprise actually. And it was strange because they first said no, it sounds totally wrong, and then in response to a different question, they still generated the plural. And it is strange that they generated these plural forms for different sentences. So one of them generated a plural form for when there were several village names. I lived in that village, that village, that village. The other one generated plural forms if there were several place names, like I was in hospital, in at school, in the kindergarten. What conclusions can we make? Firstly, we have understood that our questionnaire had some faults which made it harder for the speakers to answer. Firstly, the month names. So we know that Evenki have their own calendar and their own month names. However, many speakers use Russian names marked in their daily speech. However, when we ask people to translate month names into Evenki, they start thinking about the Evenki version, so they get distracted and frustrated if they can't remember well. And so it's a bad idea to use month names. Secondly, we think that sometimes the questionnaire was perhaps too kind of directing people towards these plural forms. So, well, perhaps we should have added some fillers in order to distract them from these plural forms. And thirdly, sometimes it is hard to deliver some notion of indefiniteness just by describing the situation in Russian. Perhaps if we had some pictures or some better context description, it would be better. However, we also can make some conclusions. So, firstly, plural forms of unique objects like village names or unique objects like place names can be generated in principle. So they are not considered abstract or just totally wrong by all people, as they would have been considered by Russian speakers, for example. The second point is that plural forms are usually used if there is some list of places or some list of village names. And thirdly, still there is a trend only for geographical names and place names to be, well, sometimes borrowed or place names to be used in these contexts. So, well, originally Evenki names are not used in this context. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for staying in time. So we have some time for questions. We are a little bit ahead of time, but I think it's an interesting paper. Actually, it gave us a good impression how linguists work, and that's often from the point of view of anthropologists, it's a very different approach. Yeah, please.
Ну, это в анкету можно вставить какие-то предложения, которые абсолютно не имеют отношения к тому, что мы исследуем, и просто отвлекать человека. Ну, да, отвлекающее внимание. Просто, в принципе, их должно быть достаточно много. Потому что иначе человек постоянно, если он спрашивает одно и то же, постоянно ты его уже направляешь на то, чтобы он отвечал, что ты хочешь.
А у вас это раньше не было?
Надо было лучше продумать, как мне сейчас кажется, потому что ты там спрашиваешь 3 раза, и после этого человек уже все. Ну, как бы, если даже вам вот по-русски задавать анкету, то, скорее всего, вы после 5-го предложения начнете уже все вам казаться правильным или все неправильным. Ну, это естественно.
Что из вас, от вас хотите?
Вот. И просто поэтому нужно как-то отвлекать внимание.
Спасибо.
If there are no questions, I have a question. Did any of your informants gave you any kind of clue? I mean, are they reflecting on do they have a knowledge about what is plural and what is singular? Do they have some kind of grammatical, do they have an imagination of what you are asking for when you ask for grammatical forms?
Yes, well, at least some of them do, because they all study at school, and some of them say no, it's plural, like it can be used. Still, I don't think they have some explanation of why you can use it or why you can't. So when they start thinking about it, yes, they know the notion of plural and singular, but perhaps they can't explain it why they can use it.
And some of the local linguists, I mean, there are speakers who are trained in Harrison Institute, for instance, and are developing language schools and so on.
Yes. Well, we have not actually contacted them on this. Well, it would be interesting, right?
On this.
On this.
Thank you. I think if there are no more questions. There's a question. Yeah.
Можно вопрос?
Да.
Если вы общаетесь тоже со мной по-английскому, если во множественном числе Evenki это человек 20, я хотел спросить просто. Evenki как он, это тоже множественное число, это человек 50. Evenki это уже человек 100, это христианский говор такой есть?
Нет, я никогда не слышала. Они говорят я слышала о Рокаку.
Ну, Рокаку это
значит много оленей.
Да.
Но я не слышала именно Нехэ, да, вы говорите еще. Но просто говорят о оленей, о Рокаку очень много оленей, а вот Нехэ я никогда не слышала. Они, знаете, говорят, там есть, допустим, Нихэ, это значит мама покойная.
Нет, это покой. Это другое окончание. Нага. Допустим, Савель Нага. Это добавляется любому имя, которое человек покойный. И должны обязательно ставиться, что человек покойный, он должен там остаться. Это совсем другое. Еще раз.
Это русский говорит. Это множество.
Нет, я не слышала. Это очень интересно.
Но, если честно, даже в их говор, это только в тайге можно такое слышать. Часто. Это не каждый простой говорящий знает эти окончания.
Но это эвенкийский или ивенский?
Эвенкийский.
Эвенкийский. Это в Якутии, да?
Амурская область.
Амурская область.
Нюкжа.
Ну, это на грани между
Да.
Южной и Якутией. В принципе, это одна группа южная.
Ну да. Но локальные варианты в каждой деревне.
Конечно,
Да,
конечно.
так что-
Вы абсолютно правы.